right, so let's move on to our next topic. During a summit yesterday, Prime Minister Mark Carney promised First Nation rights holders wealth and prosperity for generations to come. Bill C-5 is designed to connect and transform the Canadian economy through building new railways and energy corridors, igniting Indigenous economic growth, and promising that these big projects get built the right way with adequate consultation. However, some leaders left the summit still skeptical of the government, as Carney's comments have drawn mixed reviews. So, what was your takeaway from the summit?
Oh, boo.
Okay, talk to us, Riley.
The first thing I thought, I'm like, because first of all, this is a much bigger story than just Indigenous communities. Are you pro-extraction or anti-extraction? There's never been a consensus on that amongst nations. They're entitled to whatever form of economic development they want. What is the problem is the way that the government is going about it, which is through this sweeping legislation that, yes, is bad for First Nations, but it's also bad for environmental regulatory bodies, other sorts of due process, mechanisms. And so I think what is so frustrating is to hear him say stuff too like, this is going to be great for you. It's like First Nations have had it up to here with having a government, the prime ministers tell us what's good for us. Listen to us say what's good for us, right? And the fact that this bill has already passed and now they're just going around saying like, well, now we want to talk about it. It's like, well, no was never an option then. Consent was never on the table. It was already decided and now you're trying to quell maybe any sort of pushback or resistance that you're going to get. And I think it's going to be a lot bigger than they anticipate at this point.
You think this is a PR job? PR job.
Okay.
I guess the question I have in all of this is, I think we cannot deny on the one hand what it sounds like the point of the bill was, which is with this elbows up, everything's Canadiana, we want to keep things at home, and I think no one's going to argue that we want economic development in whatever form that looks like. We also know there's a housing crisis, so part of this is infrastructure, it's building homes, it's doing all of this. I'm curious to know, can environmentalism, can respecting treaty rights, can that live in the same world as economic development? So how do those two things fit? Because it always seems like when it's business or the environment loses. If it's business and Indigenous rights, Indigenous rights always lose. Can they coexist?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's great. And I think the answer is yes, but it has to be done in a right way, and every government has to understand that they're not just, inheriting whatever their relationships with First Nations are. They're inheriting the relationships of all the governments previous that have broken trust so significantly. And so their job is to become a good partner that First Nations can trust, not to try and be the one to subvert, all that
And obviously with the way that people feel about the summit, that was not achieved, because before you made your point, which was very, very great point, I was feeling a little hopeful. Mark Carney's been in office, I think, for 125, 126 days, and I'm still want to give him the grace that he is making the right decision on behalf of all of us. I understand that people are skeptical, but I was more hopeful that, you know what, he says that he's ready to listen, and that's what I want to hear from my leader. I'm hoping that they are listening even more. It's like, it's not enough. Whatever you're doing, it's not enough. And you need to do more and bring more people to the table and really listen and take action. So that is what I really want to hear, but then I am also listening to you and I'm like, you're right, maybe it's not the right move.
My takeaway is it's very, very bleak. It's so bleak.
More bleak than
I think that's because yesterday on the Front Burner podcast from CBC, they interviewed David Suzuki. We all know David Suzuki. And it was about climate change and it was about building pipelines and so on. And if you want to be very, very depressed, do listen to it. It's 30 minutes of the most depressing thing I've ever heard, but all of it felt absolutely urgent. And it feels like First Nations, many of them, are the only ones that are treating climate change as the emergency that it is.
I think for me, a bigger issue than just this one bill is that it seems like this so-called era of reconciliation that we've been through, or at least the image of it, the rhetoric of it, is gone. We're in a new era. That's scary. It means that we're going to have to buckle down and fight. And I think it won't really get better until Canadians also realize that topics related to Indigenous people aren't just like policy issues that some politicians can take seriously and some can't, and will pick up when it's convenient and put down when it's not. They're fundamental constitutional obligations. They have to be lived up to all the time consistently.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, Riley, but what would you like to see done? How would you like this summit to end?
I think that there is going to have to be, if they're going to not want to see the court challenges, if they don't want to see the blockades, they're going to have to agree to significant amendments. They're going to have to start abandoning all also this very vague language they're using around
Yeah.
consultation.
Like, maybe.
Yeah, and move towards free, prior, and informed consent. And also talk about, real partnership beyond just economic development in terms of resource extraction. Why is it when Indigenous people are told that they're going to grow, it's only through mining and logging and all of these other things? We have to have other means to do it.
Okay, so like, I guess, again, I'll come back with, how do we are in a crunch for time, right? Time, we need the environment, but we also need roofs over our heads. So we do need to maybe have less reliance on Americans for energy or what have you. So it's the timeline. Is there a world where these consultations can still happen in an expedient way, or is that just not going to even be part of the equation?
I think that the government should know, first of all, the partners that are willing to work with them at this point.
Right.
I think those nations would have made themselves clear. And instead, stop banging on the door repeatedly of these nations who have said, no, we don't want this at all.
Yeah.
And I think that would save them a lot of time also, just trying to force things through. But I also think that another thing that we could do is realize that there's going to be short-term pain for long-term gain when we can do things like, instead of mining, let's invest in renewable resources. Let's start going with a just transition. Let's start doing things,
Because the climate crisis is costing us trillions of dollars. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's do that instead of spending money.
But don't you feel like we were really taking that seriously until Donald Trump started talking about tariffs? And I feel like tariff conversation wiped everything else off the table.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Well, we're not going to have all the answers here, but I love hearing all of these perspectives. This is must think about stuff as a Canadian, for sure.
Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.